All right, let's get some reaction to everything happening on this Friday morning and welcome in the Powerhouse panel. Joining me and Allison today, best-selling author and political analyst Mark Halperin and Project 21 National Advisory Board member and principal at Red Tail Strategies, Christopher Arps, back with us. I'd like to start with Russia-Ukraine. The administration yesterday asking for another $33 billion from Congress for Ukraine, to aid Ukraine. Now, we've already allotted almost $14 billion for Ukraine aid. I think the number is right around $13.6 billion, somewhere in there. And we've only spent $3.5 billion of that. Now, over the past couple weeks, the U.S. has doubled down and started to sort of, we saw it with Lloyd Austin and Antony Blinken over the weekend when they were in Ukraine. Basically, they are now changing their tune and getting behind Ukraine actually winning this war. But when Jen Psaki was asked yesterday what U.S. policy is in Ukraine, do we want Ukraine to win, she could not give a simple three-letter answer. Take a listen.
Is it the policy goal of the United States for Ukraine to defeat Russia?
Well, look, it depends on how we're not going to define that from here. That's for the that's for the Ukrainians to define.
Mark Halperin, we'll begin with you. Good to see you. Happy Friday. Why couldn't she just say, yes, we are behind the Ukrainians. We want them to win. Why was that so complicated?
Well, we still, as a country and as a NATO force, don't want to be engaged in a direct conflict with Putin. So I think that they've moved more towards saying the right things regarding the definitive way in which this needs to end, with Putin defeated and degraded. But I think it's important, and I think it's the right strategy, to not be so clear-cut in any way that can give Putin an excuse to use weapons of mass destruction. So I don't want to accuse you of wanting to have it both ways, Rob, but they are stepping up and spending billions, trying to spend billions more to help Ukraine. They've been pretty decisive in most ways, but I think the things you point to, like what Jen Psaki wouldn't say, are done on purpose to try to avoid a direct confrontation, which is still not in our American interest.
I think Mark is trying to get involved in a direct confrontation with me at 6:35 a.m.
Yeah, well, of course we don't want that, but doesn't Putin already know that we're supporting Ukraine by giving them all of the weapons?
It's not a mystery anymore.
And money, so he knows the
Allison,
side we're on.
He was getting all of his news through CNN Plus, and so now he's in the dark.
Mark, just a quick follow, and then I want to get to Chris. But why hasn't Joe Biden seen any kind of bump in his approval rating as a result of the way that he's handled this? James Carville, 1992, it's the economy, stupid. That's going to be the biggest issue come November, and we're not seeing any bump in his approval rating.
It's a mystery and a frustration to White House aides. I think three things that contribute to it. One is, as you said, the economy. Americans, I think, are more concerned about inflation than they are about what's going on in Kyiv. Second is, although he's been decisive in some ways, I think the overhang of Afghanistan has left people still doubting whether he's tough and resolute enough. And then finally, this is open-ended, right? I mean, the U.S. has stepped up, but it's not clear how this is going to end. I think the American people are waiting to see the end result rather than just effort along the way.
Okay, Chris, nice to have you on. Let's take the opposite side of that. So Joe Biden hasn't seen any bump in his approval rating as a result of the way that the U.S. and NATO have conducted themselves in supporting the people of Ukraine. The head of the UN was, walking through the streets of Kyiv yesterday. Don't forget, they're 7 hours ahead of us there. Could it be because, in the eyes of the American people, we do not think that Joe Biden is handling things well when it comes to Ukraine?
I think that's the exact reason. It looks like the American government, the president, is leading from behind. We've seen major NATO and European leaders have traveled to Ukraine, have met with the president of Ukraine. Our president has not. All throughout this crisis, it seems that the president is leading from behind. And I'm so tired of us where it seems like we're capitulating to Russia. We've got to do what we've got to do and make sure that Putin knows that and do what we need to do.
Okay, this all ties to the situation at the border. A lot of the questions from conservatives yesterday were around, well, geez, we're now up around almost $50 billion in aid for Ukraine. A lot of this money could go right to our southern border to try and get a handle on the situation down there. Alejandro Mayorkas was questioned yesterday on Capitol Hill by Congressman Ken Buck, and that's where that Benedict Arnold comparison was made. Take a listen.
My constituents want you impeached because they believe you've committed treason. They compare you to Benedict Arnold. And are you ashamed for what you've done to this country?
Congressman, I have so much to say.
You got a minute and 17 seconds to say it.
I won't ask you for an apology.
Don't.
I won't.
Mark, your reaction to that, and Ken Buck is not somebody who's running for president or the Senate or anything like that anytime soon. So this, a lot of times we see chest beating and grandstanding out there. This seemed pretty visceral, pretty real.
This is, I think, arguably the biggest domestic policy failure of the Biden administration. They still don't seem to have a plan. They put something out over the last couple of days that has not satisfied members of both parties on Capitol Hill. That's ostensibly a new plan to deal with what's expected to be a record influx over the next few months. So I don't know what their long-term game is. They can joust on Capitol Hill all they want, but the American people expect results here. Joe Biden chose to change the Trump policies on immigration, and this is what we have to show for it so far. They're going to need to prove to people they can control this, and so far they haven't, and the repercussions for Democrats in the midterms I think are going to be pretty fast.
Okay, panel, good start. We'll pick this back up in about 20 minutes at the top of the hour. Mark Halperin, Chris Arps, thanks so much. Again, we'll see you again, 7 a.m.